today's video, we have the latest NHL trade talk on the Montreal Canadiens, the Edmonton Oilers, the Vegas Golden Knights. We have some tidbits too on the Toronto Maple Leafs, and would Vancouver consider trading Brock Boeser? There's a lot about Boeser in the rumor mill here today. Plus, we have some updates on some injuries and waivers, and all that and more is coming up next. So welcome back to another video here at Top Shelf Hockey. As I mentioned, we have a variety of NHL news and rumors to talk about here today. Let's kick things off with news from the NHL waiver wire. The Seattle Kraken have placed forward Nathan Bastien on waivers. Bastien's appeared in 12 games so far for the Kraken this year, putting up 2 points. He's 23 years old. He's a pretty good size center/winger, 6'4", 205 to 210 pounds. Of course, he was taken from the Devils in the expansion draft. Again, Seattle, as we know, in my opinion at least, and I know some people share this view, had some interesting and yet confusing picks in the expansion draft based on what was available. This was one of those players I honestly thought, no offense to Bastien, I thought they could have done a little bit better selection. And we've had a few players here that just really aren't living up to the task here. Even the players you thought would be more of like a slam dunk, like Driedger and Grubauer, are not really having great seasons either. So things are a bit of a struggle there. But of course, they wanted to activate forward Mason Appleton, who was their selection from the Winnipeg Jets. Appleton's been injured for a while, and he's ready to return. So this is essentially opening up a roster spot for him. We'll see if Bastien clears waivers, and if so, we'll find out tomorrow afternoon, or if he'll remain with the Kraken and can be assigned, or what his future will hold. Now, we also had word on the waiver wire as well that the Nashville Predators have prospect Patrick Harper on unconditional waivers for the purpose of contract termination. I found this one a little bit more surprising. Patrick Harper has been in the organization with the Preds for a few years now. Of course, he went through the United States national team program, played, I believe it was 3 years at BU, Boston University, and has 2 years now in the pro hockey scene. But of course, last year there wasn't a lot of action, so he split the season between the East Coast and the American Hockey League, but didn't really get a ton of playing time at either level. He's appeared in 9 games at the AHL level for Milwaukee, the affiliate for the Preds this year so far, putting up no points. And now his time with the Predators organization will come to a close. Now, I'm not sure if the intention here is to try to sign with another NHL club and hopefully get more opportunity, or if he's heading overseas to the KHL or Europe. I haven't seen any indication as of yet where he might be going. At one point, he was viewed upon as being a pretty decent prospect from the U.S. team. Obviously, he was never like a super high-end guy. He's on smaller side. He's like 5'8", 180, 185. Not overly huge. Normally plays the wing. But it's just kind of surprising to see him at such a young age be cut loose without only playing, a limited amount of pro hockey. But Harper's time with the Preds organization is over, and we'll see where he lands next. One call-up that's being done, which hopefully will be a good opportunity for him, will be Morgan Frost with the Flyers. They ran into another injury in the last game with Derek Brassard, so Frost is now going to be called up here again. He's kind of almost in the boat here with the Flyers, that he's been a prospect now for quite a while. He put up some really huge numbers in junior hockey in the OHL, had a great stint with Team Canada at the World Juniors, has been really good American Hockey League player, but has yet to be able to stick in the NHL over the past 3 years now with the Flyers. This is the last year of his ELC. We'll see. He needs to make the most of this opportunity, or you do have to think that, like we just talked about with Harper, that he might be a prospect that the Flyers decide to move on from here in the near future if he can't, kind of stick and find the consistency at the NHL level. But hopefully it works out for him this go-around. A few other injuries as well. Detroit had to place defenseman Troy Stetcher on injured reserve. The Islanders had announced yesterday as well, which I'm not sure we covered, but Brock Nelson's going to be out for about 2 to 4 weeks. So the situation with the Islanders continues to get a little bit worse. Of course, they have several players out in COVID protocol. They had to move Ryan Pulock's IR contract to LTIR to create some additional cap space to call players up, which include, I believe, Thomas Hickey and a few others that are coming up from the minors here to cover some roles and spots on a depleted Islanders lineup, which is not good. Now, there's also some talk today, and it's hard to say what's right and what isn't, but in the rumor mill, Dave Pagnotta of the fourthperiod.com put out there that he's got sources indicating that the Islanders have requested the NHL shut them down and postpone at least the next few games, including tonight's game against the Rangers. Of course, that's not happening. That game is moving forward. I know they're actually in warm-ups as I record this video, so that game is definitely going to take place. But then we had other sources say that they've checked with Lou Lamoriello, and Lou says that there's been no conversations with the NHL. But I think the language there might have been chosen carefully. Just because there's been no conversations doesn't mean the Islanders haven't put forth the request, and maybe they just haven't officially discussed it with the NHL as of yet. But as we know and see with other situations, it's kind of difficult to determine how exactly they're making the choice. Ottawa got shut down, but they had to have 10 cases, whereas San Jose had similar situation to the Islanders, and they didn't get shut down. So I don't know. There's a lot of people really up in arms here on what's right and what's not, and you hate to see teams going through this because it's hard to really be at your best and have any chance to win when you're so depleted because of all the players in the protocol, along with other injuries and things that they're already dealing with here. So we'll see where this goes, but it's certainly going to be a story to watch in the coming days. At least they didn't have anybody new added to the protocol list today, which is certainly a step in the right direction. On to the trade rumors for today. We do have word from Vegas Hockey now that the Golden Knights are indeed shopping to make some moves, cut some salary, and prepare themselves for some other moves to make the team better later in the year. And Matthias Janmark is apparently very much available from the Golden Knights. Now, he's signed to a one-year deal, only $2 million, so it shouldn't be a huge contract to try to move if they want to do that. To be completely honest, I was a little bit surprised they re-signed him. They acquired him last year at the deadline. He didn't do too bad, but to me, I'm not really sure that signing him for $2 million this year was really the best move, but they did it, and obviously it's not really working out for the best right now. Of course, the Golden Knights are going through their fair share of injuries as well. They got a lot of guys on long term, including the newly acquired Jack Eichel. Of course, Max Pacioretty's still there as well. Mark Stone's recently returned, but they're still very, very much depleted there in Vegas. And Janmark, it's not really clear what kind of return they'd be looking for. I'm going to suggest it probably wouldn't be a lot. I think we're probably looking at like a mid-round pick, something to that effect, maybe a prospect. Wouldn't be anything much. They might want an NHL contract in return as well, because right now, with all the injuries, they do need an NHL body. They might prefer somebody making a little bit less money, but certainly, going to be debatable what they do there, but certainly Vegas is going to be an interesting team to watch. So you're going to have to need to tread water to stay in the playoff hunt, because it could be later into the season before they're anywhere close to being full strength. And that's, of course, assuming they don't run into too many more several injuries leading into that. Onto the Edmonton Oilers. There's some talk that with the goaltending situation somewhat stable, of course, Mikko Koskinen has been kind of overachieving lately, but I don't think that's something they really need to still look at that, because in my opinion, Koskinen, even though he's getting the wins for the most part and still playing probably better than most of us expected, it's hard to say what they're going to do at Edmonton with goaltending, because Mike Smith obviously is still the number one guy there, but ultimately his health and his injury situation is going to be critical this year. Thankfully, young goaltender Stuart Skinner has been putting in mostly some good games to kind of get some wins and take the load off of Koskinen. And there was a lot of talk about the Oilers shopping for a goalie, and that talk has kind of quieted and calmed down a bit with the emergence of Skinner. So I still think maybe later in the season, depending on what's going on with Smith, that there's still a chance to try to move Koskinen for somebody that might be a little bit, more consistent. But that's going to be a wait and see thing. I don't think the Oilers are going to jump at that at all. But with their sudden, issues with injuries on the blue line, there is some talk that maybe they would go after adding some depth on defense. And I know one name that was brought up was Travis Dermott of the Toronto Maple Leafs. And as much as that might be a decent fit for them, considering that he's not making a ton of money, he could play, second or third pair role. I wouldn't put him any higher than that, because he seems to struggle when he gets too many minutes and too much of the top line competition. But he's certainly a very serviceable defenseman. However, I'm not so sure that the Leafs are going to be so anxious to make that kind of move. A few weeks back, there was a lot of talk that Dermott and Hall were very much available and could be had for the right price. But of course, at that point in time, the Maple Leafs were also struggling a little bit more. They were looking for some salary cap, relief, you could say. And that was before they really kind of went on their winning ways here. Now the last, 10, 12, 13 games, whatever they're at, they've been doing a lot of winning and playing a lot of solid games. Before that, they did have a stretch that was certainly very much debatable. But at this point, I think the Leafs, as long as they're doing what they're doing now, they don't really need to rush and do that. They needed the salary cap space because I think they were concerned they were going to have to make other moves to shake things up a little bit. But of course, things kind of righted the ship here on their own with making some adjustments and players kind of living up more to their performance and reputation, what they're expected here. So as much as Dermott to the Oilers might make sense, later in the year, things can always change. I mean, you never know. I mean, unless the Oilers come calling for a price tag that the Leafs don't want to pass up, maybe it happens, but at the same time, like I said, it'd have to come later. If the Leafs going to revisit that near the deadline, that maybe they want to move a defenseman, then perhaps Edmonton's a landing spot for him. But otherwise, I think the Oilers might have to look elsewhere, and it's a little bit early right now. I know Elliotte Friedman was saying on the Jeff Merrick show today on the radio that at the end of the day, he said trade talks around the NHL are starting to heat up. Teams have got enough games under their belt now that there's a little bit more clear cut on where the needs are. The only problem, he said, is obviously a lot of teams have cap issues, so that makes it a little bit more challenging. But the trade talk itself is certainly heating up, and there's lots more conversations taking place, which over time will lead to a few more deals actually getting done. But I think it's probably going to be closer to the holiday freeze around Christmas time that we most likely, I mean, you never know when trades can happen. It could happen sooner, but I think we'll likely get at least a few trades between now and then, with more of them coming after that, going in closer to the deadline. But still, the talks are heating up. Teams are starting to have more conversations. Their needs are becoming more apparent. Some teams are slowly kind of working their way towards having kind of determining what their season is going to be. Are they going for the playoffs? Are they not? And all that stuff. So we'll see where things go. Things should change in the coming days and weeks as that gets a little bit more obvious to teams of what they need to do. Now, another name brought up today by Elliotte Friedman on the Jeff Merrick show was Jake Allen of the Montreal Canadiens. Of course, right now there's a few teams looking for goaltenders, but of course, trading for goalies is usually a more difficult thing to do. And of course, he wonders, with the season Montreal is having, would they consider moving the netminder, who still has a little bit of term on his contract? If they do, it's not something that would likely happen right away, given the fact that they're going to want to wait for Carey Price to probably be, in full return mode. He'd be able to carry the load the rest of the way, and of course, they could get a decent return for Allen. Friedman goes on to talk about the fact that he was very much in play during the offseason. Before the expansion draft and Carey Price agreed to waive his no-move clause, he was very much in play. The Montreal Canadiens felt like they might have to trade him because they were going to lose him during the expansion draft. There are clearly teams out there like the Sabres, even Coyotes, looking for goaltending help, and he certainly could be, a key piece there that might be able to help them longer term and get a good return for Montreal. So it's certainly, a situation worth noting. I don't suspect we'll see a trade anytime soon, but it'll be interesting to see as we get later in the year if Montreal doesn't get things turned around. It's almost getting to that point where it's too late to challenge for playoffs, so it'll be interesting to see if they move on from the veteran netminder or what they decide to do in that front. Of course, the other big news today we want to talk about is the Vancouver Canucks. Of course, so the big talk of the NHL right now. We're expecting something big to go down just about any time, whether it be a big trade, somebody getting fired, or what have you. Of course, they're a team that's greatly underachieved, and many feel they're at the breaking point for something significant to take place. Of course, yesterday we talked about the rumor of a significant trade involving the Minnesota Wild and young forward Kevin Fiala, that the Wild apparently had inquired with the Canucks on the availability of JT Miller, and it was believed Fiala was the player that was being dangled as potential trade bait to make something like that happen. Now today it seems like all the focus is on Brock Boeser. He's heavily in the rumor mill today, but possibly being involved in trade talks with Vancouver and Minnesota or other teams. He even felt it got to the point that his agent, Ben Hankinson, even felt the need to put out a statement, which I'll show you here from Twitter, where he basically indicates that Brock's aware of the rumors and understands it's a business, but he's focused on trying to help the Vancouver Canucks win. And Boeser himself even made a comment later today that he's heard about the rumors, wasn't too concerned about it right now, that doesn't think he's going to be traded, and at the end of the day, just trying to do the right thing and help his team win, which is certainly something you'd understand. Boeser's a player that's basically been involved in Canucks rumors really for quite some time. Simply this always comes up, not only if the team struggles, but around his own personal contracts and things like that. And he is a player that's in need of a new deal here soon. And, as much as it would be something that would be very, difficult for Vancouver to pull off, they have to be careful here, because if they trade the wrong player and do the wrong deal, they could set themselves back even further. And as Elliotte Friedman noted on the Jeff Merrick show today too, he also said that the other reason Vancouver seems to be taking their time with this is they don't really want to make a mistake to the point that it's, they either trade or do something that they end up regretting for many years to come. So they obviously need to tread very carefully here, but at the same time, something has to give, because it just seems like there's nothing going right in Vancouver. Even when the effort's better, the results aren't coming. So you have to think, when your coaches and GM and everything tells you to keep trusting the process, but when the process isn't working, something has to happen. Change is needed there. Many have been calling for the firing of Jim Benning for some time, but it's difficult to say. I personally would not be shocked to see Benning in Vancouver pull off some sort of big trade, trying to shake things up and get things, get the ship back on track here before he loses a job himself. But I would think at the stage of where things are at, that any kind of trade involving a big piece like a Boeser or a Miller might even require ownership to be involved and be okay with it, so that they're not making the wrong move here to just to save jobs. So we'll see what happens, but Boeser's heavily in the rumor mill here today. Of course, a team like Minnesota would be a homecoming for him if they traded Boeser for Fiala. Very different kinds of players there, so I'd love to know what your thoughts are. Doesn't mean to be a straight up one-for-one trade either, but it's certainly something interesting to consider. We'll have to see where things go, but many people feel it's just a matter of time before the shoe drops in Vancouver and something significant happens. But what is that going to be? Let me know your thoughts down below. We'll discuss further. If you're new to this channel, make sure you subscribe and stick around. We'll keep you up to date with all the latest news, rumors, and analysis on all 32 NHL teams. Thank you for watching, and I'll catch you next time.